Hi, thank you for joining us. We begin our report on the campaign trail. Both candidates are descending on Pennsylvania Monday. The Keystone State is one of the most crucial battleground states for both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump in this election. CBS News estimates have them neck and neck in the state. Zooming out, Harris has a slight edge nationally. Across battlegrounds, they're in a virtual tie. The vice president's lead has dropped 1% in both of those measures since mid-September. The margin of error in our CBS News polling is 2.3 points. Over the weekend, there was another scare near a Trump rally, this time in California. A man was detained near the site of the former president's Saturday rally in Coachella Valley after law enforcement at a security checkpoint found guns in his car. Secret Service says the incident did not put Trump or anyone at the rally in danger, and so far, no federal charges have been filed. CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett joins me now. Major, this will be Harris's 8th visit in western Pennsylvania. Why is she honing in on this particular area of the state?
So, Lindsay, anyone from Pennsylvania will tell you that the eastern part of the state is more East Coast, more mid-Atlantic. The western part of the state is more Midwestern or upper Midwestern. Why do I emphasize that? Because western Pennsylvania and its political proclivities are more like Wisconsin and Michigan, both also very important to the Harris Electoral College map. So, focusing on western Pennsylvania helps you not only in that part of the state, but it helps you hone a message for Wisconsin and Michigan. But let's be more specific. Allegheny County, which is in western Pennsylvania, that's where Pittsburgh is, accounts for 10%, or at least accounted for 10% of the 2020 turnout in all of Pennsylvania. And there are counties around Allegheny County that Trump carried. Biden carried Allegheny County, about 60-40. There are 3 counties right around that Trump carried 60-40. So this area is when you want to get Allegheny County if you're Harris, and you want to lose by less in those pro-Trump surrounding counties. All of that is part of a western Pennsylvania strategy, not only to make that state more winnable, but also make your outreach more persuasive, possibly in Wisconsin and Michigan.
And Harris unveiled a new policy aimed at helping black men. Former President Obama called out black male voters last week. Former President Clinton is in Georgia now rallying rural black voters for Harris. Why is her campaign focusing on this voting group?
Because it is clear from internal Harris campaign data that this group is more up for grabs than it was in 2020 or even 2016. Now, one of the things the Harris campaign is learning is that in 2016, this was a complete blind spot for Hillary Clinton's campaign. Missed it entirely in Philadelphia, Detroit, and other key cities where black turnout in general was lower than it had been for President Obama and black men specifically. So they're trying to address something that they believe was a shortcoming of Hillary Clinton's campaign. Also address the idea that perhaps with a message nationally that has been very focused on abortion rights and those attendant to reproductive health care, maybe black men don't feel that their issues or things that are as important to them are being nearly sufficiently addressed. The Harris campaign is trying to address that as well.
And Trump is ever so slightly chipping away at Harris's lead, even though polling is effectively even. What's working for him right now?
Well, I'm just going to go back to an interview I just did on America Decides with James Carville, a very experienced and very knowledgeable Democratic strategist. He said to me, the Trump campaign has an explanation. It may not have the best explanation, but it's offering things in very sharp contrasting language. The sharp contrasts are not coming in through as clearly from the Harris campaign, and voters who are still on the fence like that sharper, clearer explanation, at least so far from the Trump campaign, gravitating just a tad in that direction over Harris, but there's a long way to go.
The back and forth over medical records is ramping up again. Harris's doctor released a letter Saturday summarizing her medical history and status. I want to play a little bit of what she said at a rally in North Carolina.
And he's not being transparent with the voters. He's not being transparent. So check this out. He refuses to release his medical records. I've done it. Every other presidential candidate in modern era has done it.
More than 230 doctors, nurses, and healthcare professionals are calling on Trump to release his records. This was a letter dated October 13th, first obtained by CBS News. How much do you think that matters to undecided voters?
It is fitness adjacent, meaning how fit are you for the office of President of the United States? Obviously, that is a big part of this conversation nationally. The Harris campaign has a very definite attitude that former President Trump, by denying the 2020 election and rhetoric on the campaign trail so far, makes him unfit. But his age is also an issue. And if you watch Trump rallies, as I do a fair amount, you see he's not the candidate he was in 2020, certainly not as sharp as he was in 2016. The Harris campaign is trying to make that overall health, fitness, mental acuity argument a subtext to this campaign. But in the end, immigration, inflation, reproductive health care, and the fate of American democracy, those are the issues that show up again, again, again at the top 4 of lists of voters in our surveys and everyone else's.
Major Garrett, great to talk to you. Thank you. For more on our latest polling, I want to bring in CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. So, Anthony, we just spoke with Major about the push from the Harris campaign to court particularly black male voters. What does your polling suggest?
Well, in our estimates, Harris is getting the same percent of support among black voters that Joe Biden got in 2020. Now, there's 2 key points after that, though. The first one is, does her campaign think she needs to get an even higher percentage of that? That we'll see. But the other one is turnout, because there is an issue in which right now black voters are saying at an 83% rate that they're going to turn out, that they're definitely going to turn out, or that they already have some cast ballots by mail. That number probably would need to go higher, because you get an overall number of 88% of the electorate that says that they're definitely going to vote. So that's the turnout issue. And quite frankly, this race is so tight. I know we do the cliche, it all comes down to turnout, but it really does when everything is effectively even. There's these marginal voters, excuse me, who may or may not show up. That's probably what's going to decide this.
We have a lot of topics we want to get to, so let's talk about the economy. There have been some recent positive indicators for good movement here on the economy. Has voter sentiment changed?
Largely, it has not. But what's interesting is the reasons behind that, and some of them are distinctly partisan. Part of that is where people get their information. Part of that is what people choose to accept. And this is what I mean. Look at Harris voters and what they say about the economy. 2/3 of them say that it's good. But nearly 9 in 10 Trump voters say that it is bad. Now, that, of course, may be what they're experiencing, right? Inflation has hit people hard. That's personal experience, too. But at the same time, look at some of these things that we do measure. Harris voters more likely than Trump voters to say that the U.S. stock market is higher now, right? And the ratio of those who say it's higher to lower is much more for Harris voters than for Trump voters, even excluding those people who say they don't know, right? Not everybody has money in the market, et cetera. So there are these other measures, these other objective measures, and I'll show you this one, too, about prices in the last month. Yeah, a lot of people say and feel they're still increasing, but Trump voters much more so. So again, it comes down to not just how you experience it, but what you believe is happening in the country that kind of underpins a lot of that vote and why it doesn't move.
What else did you find in your polling? Because it's not just about not agreeing on where we should move as a country. It's not even agreeing on what's happening.
Right. Let me show you a couple of things. The most recent example is hurricane relief. And of course, there were comments by the former president about hurricane relief. He said being diverted to those not in the country legally. Look at this. 9 in 10 Harris voters say, yeah. Hurricane relief is going to people impacted by the hurricane, but 2/3 of Trump voters say that it is not, right? That's one example of different views of what is and what's going on. All right, let me show you this one because it really pertains to what you think or what we're going to see in the election coming up. And that is what happens at, I'm going to find this slide in a second, what happens in your confidence in the election going forward, right? Look at how many more Trump voters believe that there's going to be widespread fraud in this election, 47 versus 6 for Harris. And what does that do? Again, talking about these differences in beliefs, many more Trump voters say that after all is said and done, that they should challenge the results if the other side wins, much more in comparison than to Harris voters. What you believe plays out not just on Election Day, but on what people might want to see after it.
Wow, that is fascinating. Before we let you go, gender gap, what do you have on that?
Yeah, gender gap. A lot of different reasons for the gender gap, which is that more women are voting for Harris and more men for Trump. I'm going to find the slide here because what you see is it depends on what you think has been going on in the country in relation to, here we go, gender equality efforts. For Trump voters, a majority say they feel that efforts to promote gender equality have been going too far. That's a majority. But look at Harris voters. A majority say that those efforts have not been going far enough. And women who are voting for Harris even more so. And so you see how people evaluate those social issues plays out in how the vote breaks really dramatically.
Home stretch, Anthony Salvanto, thank you.
Thank you.